Haruto reincarnates into a world where magic power is everything. He is given a cheat ability by a goddess, which will aid him in his second life. He desires peace and the ability to live a lazy life. Suddenly, he is born as a prince of a country with high-quality features. His magic level is measured, and it is revealed that it is only 2, and he has no attributed powers. His father is enraged and calls him a piece of junk. However, the goddess who reincarnated him forgot to give him an attribute, and his true magic level is actually 1002. 5 old men discussed how to kill Haruto, the prince. They decided it would be better to pretend he was stillborn, since he would be a stain to his mother's reputation. Haruto was reincarnated and realized the true ugliness of humans. He began to think about surviving, learning that magic power is required to use magic, and that one's power is proportional to their magic level squared. With his level 2 power and limited knowledge, he tried using warding magic to create a transparent box. He then tried to color and make a bird fly, discovering that things covered by the ward could be moved at will. He covered himself with a thin film of warding magic and looked out the window, seeing a medieval European-styled cityscape surrounded by walls. He used warding magic to see through walls and made improvements by applying the membrane of the ward to the wall and stretching it to the other side. At less than 3 hours of age, Haruto mastered warding magic and slept for the rest of the day. 2 years ago, the Lightning Princess led a special unit to subjugate the devil and killed the Demon King. The king was unhappy because only the princess was famous. In this world, magical power was the absolute, and the king's magic level had closed at Sen. The Lightning Princess's magic level was 4, and she became the queen. The king decided to kill his useless son and blame it on the queen's defective womb. Meanwhile, Queen Jitsuwa met with the Blaines to plan her next seed. The prince tries to avoid being hunted but decides to rest for now. A disrespectful soldier holds the baby, who is actually a prince wrapped in a white cloth. The soldiers abandon him in a deep forest, leaving him to survive on his own. Suddenly, a huge red dog approaches, which the soldiers called a hellhound. The prince uses barrier magic to protect himself and tries to attack the dog with small barriers, causing a mysterious voice to question what he is doing. After creating a large detection barrier, the prince discovers the soldiers who abandoned him, all dead. The voice reveals itself to be the Fenrir, the red dog who can speak and is actually a pretty woman. A demon-sized creature spoke to the young Haruto, who struggled with communication but found it easier with animals. Despite lacking the ability to speak, Haruto attempted to create a barrier that produced voice-like sounds based on his thoughts. He introduced himself as a prince who had been thrown away due to having a low magic level. The demon, Flame Fenrir, recognized the king crest on Haruto's chest, but was puzzled by his low magic level, which was only 2. Haruto posed as a demon lord and attempted to negotiate with Flame Fenrir, who had been wounded in a battle with a demon hunting party. Haruto examined and closed the wound, and Flame Fenrir was so grateful that she offered to pledge loyalty to him. However, Haruto suddenly requested breast milk as he was still a baby. Haruto, a baby, realizes that food is urgent, despite being afraid of not being able to eat it. Freya, his beast partner, transforms into a naked girl with attractive features and offers to breastfeed him. Haruto declines and asks about barrier magic. Freya explains that it defines an area by giving attributes, which can aid in offense and defense. However, it cannot move, and the magical power to maintain multiple barriers at the same time increases dramatically as the number increases, causing a burden on the brain. Haruto shows off his unique barrier magic that can move around, shocking Freya. He asks for food, prompting Freya to offer her reproductive system, but is declined. Haruto explains the importance of ovulation and breast milk to Freya. However, their conversation is interrupted by the alarm of intruders. Freya quickly changes into her rider suit, as Haruto creates a barrier to communicate with her. A large man named Gord Zenfis appears and wants to take Haruto. Freya questions him, who reveals that he had lost his wife and wants to raise Haruto himself. After some negotiation, the three made a deal where Gord will take care of Haruto until adulthood, and Freya will keep an eye on them. Gord wipes his blood on a cloth to fake Haruto's death, and Freya destroys the basket. Haruto was able to survive with the protection of Gord for the next 10 years. Haruto enters Arc 2 and turns 10 years old. Gord Zenfis adopts him after finding him abandoned in the forest. Haruto is content living as a hikikomori, but his fathers want him to lead a fuller life. Haruto creates a copy android with AI that he controls via IVR goggles. His sister-in-law, Charlotte, is impressed by the clone. She asks about Haruto's fight against an evil organization. Haruto dismisses her concerns, hoping to keep a peaceful life. Charlotte is a talented magician, but is frustrated with her lack of adulthood. Haruto doesn't realize that soon Charlotte will be targeted by the evil organization. The Princess of Orteas, Jitsuwa Orteas, lost her first child, but a new prince was born the following year. Meanwhile, King Jirke Orteas is losing his authority and is concerned about Prince Rayash. The king meets with his daughter Marianne, who is next in line for the throne, and gives her a dagger for protection. Jitsuwa plots against Marianne and a girl named Charlotte, and plans to blame Marianne for Charlotte's accidental death. Jitsuwa also intends to dispose of Zenfis' adopted son. Haruto sat cross-legged in his room, surrounded by plate-like wards projecting various scenes. He was searching for the perfect lakeside spot to retreat to, while also keeping monsters out with his wards. His dog-eared maid, Frey, was interrupted by his younger sister Charlotte, who was playing with her tail. Haruto revealed to Charlotte that he was searching for a place to do magical research, and she had a delusion that he was a hero fighting against an evil organization. Haruto planned on researching ancient magic for no attributes, and upon hearing this, Frey questioned his magic level, which he suspected could only measure up to 2 digits. Charlotte denied being able to do what Haruto did. Frey mentioned that Gordo was looking for Haruto. They were reminded that a guest was visiting from the royal capital for inspection, and Haruto quickly changed into formal wear before leaving his room. The inspection team from the capital arrived, and Haruto scrambled to get ready. A boy and a beautiful girl emerged from a grand carriage. Haruto disliked the boy's rude behavior and was scolded when caught staring. The boy insulted Haruto's magical abilities and challenged him to a sword fight. Using his barrier magic, Haruto surprised the boy and lightly poked him, causing him to bleed. Haruto's father-in-law remarked on the vast difference in their abilities. Marianne witnesses Rayash attacking Heart, who easily dodges and lightly pokes Rayash's back. Marianne and Gord are puzzled by Heart's ability to move with such agility and speed, despite having a magic level of 2, much lower than Rayash's level of 9. Even his father, who spent 10 years with Heart, cannot explain his movement, which seems impossible without magic. Rayash tries to attack Heart with a fireball, but is unable to cast the spell properly due to exhaustion, and Heart easily blocks it with a barrier. Marianne apologizes for Rayash's behavior and has her first conversation with Heart, discovering his low magic level. Rayash is in the castle's best guest room, frustrated after losing to an incompetent opponent. His mission from his mother was to find a fault with Zenfis, but Rayash is disrespectful and can't focus. He's invited to a dinner party and a visit to the farmland, where he'll meet Zenfis' daughter. Unknown to Rayash, the knights plan to attack him, the Lightning Princess, and their carriage. The maid, Freya, knows everything about the plot. Freya monitors the castle through a surveillance barrier, a task assigned to her because she otherwise gets bored and creates problems. Listening to secret conversations, she is unsure of the true intentions of those she is watching. Heart did not expect Freya to provide useful information and has previously been frustrated by her unhelpful reports. Meanwhile, Heart wakes up and is informed by his copy android about events at the banquet he missed. When his sister Charlotte tells him about an invitation from the prince, Heart decides to investigate and protect her. While surveying the area, They come across a group of robed individuals performing redemption magic, causing Heart to take action in his hero persona. A group of people wearing robes were performing suspicious spells in the forest near the highway. Haruto approached them, and they were surprised by his sudden appearance. The leader of the group ordered his members to attack Haruto, but his protective barrier proved effective. Suddenly, a group of pale skeletal soldiers emerged from a glowing magic circle cast by the group. The skeletons turned on their summoners, and Haruto realized that he had disrupted their summoning circle. Haruto commanded the skeletons to stop, and they obeyed. He then used a tracking barrier to locate the group's base and found a stone golem guarding it. The golem was also brought under Haruto's control, and he proceeded to interrogate the group. Kaylee Zoff, the captain of the summoning unit, is faced with a black-clad man who has a giant golem by his side. Zoff and his men are unable to move from the neck down, covered by an invisible barrier. The man questions them about their purpose and location, but Zoff refuses to disclose any information. The black-clad man begins taking out Zoff's subordinates one by one and reconnecting their heads to their bodies, forcing them to confess. Zoff ultimately reveals that they were sent by the Queen to attack a farmland and kill Charlotte Zemphis due to the Queen's fear of her talent and potential to divide the country. The man dismisses the captain's plan as terrible and questions the mother's involvement. The man denies saying anything different to the three guys who spoke earlier. He reveals his plan to ask the guys in Ichiu and the skeleton army. The man questions the group's loyalty to the Queen and their willingness to harm a child. One man reveals he will not forgive them for trying to kill his sister and snaps his finger, causing everyone but the black man to lose consciousness. A royal carriage traveled down the highway carrying the prince, who was accompanied by a young girl, Rias, and a boy named Charles. Rias encouraged the prince to accept defeat graciously. Charles then asked how the prince managed to be so athletic without using magic. The prince revealed that he did use magic to strengthen himself during the match, but couldn't identify the magic. Charles suggested he might have demon ancestry, but the prince denied it. They then discussed bathing together, which made the prince's sister embarrassed. Later, they arrived at a wheat field, and the prince's father, a frontier count, apologized for forcing the prince to attend the inspection. The prince asked what his father would do if the Queen attempted to harm Charles. His father revealed that he could only protect two people and would have to abandon Charles if it came to that. The prince wished there were no queen, but his father explained that her presence prevented a civil war. The prince then asked if his father could become the next king, but his father said that he wasn't fit for it. They discuss waiting until a certain someone becomes an adult before taking action. Charlotte is mentioned, and it's noted that she is smart despite struggling with a delusional habit. The speaker is praised for understanding the situation and the need to protect Charlotte. They acknowledge the possibility of assassination attempts, possibly ordered by the Lightning Princess Queen Jitsuwa. The main character ponders what to do if they can't kill Jitsuwa. They mention a desire for a reunion with mother and child. The inspection tour of the prince and princess went smoothly, but Girota receives bad news about the disappearance of the summoner unit. She questions the knight, who suggests Zemphis may be responsible, but Girota is suspicious of the knight's competence. Suddenly, a shadowy figure enters, killing the knight and other knights, revealing himself as the unidentified black warrior. Girota unsuccessfully tries to defend herself with the holy sword and her magic, but the black warrior overpowers her and renders her unconscious. Girota wakes up and sees her own headless body. She learns from a black man that he separated her head and body, but connected them through magic. He warns her not to oppose him and gives her a neck collar that keeps her head on her body. Girota puts it on, feeling humiliated and miserable. She cries for the first time in her life. From then on, she rarely appears in public and becomes a subject of ridicule. 5 years pass. Haruto, a hikikomori, lives in a log house on the shore of a lake thanks to his android copy who has been acting as him when he's away. However, his father wants him to move to the capital to attend an elite magic school, and Haruto refuses. His sister, the princess, sent the recommendation letter, and his father convinces him to go and learn, and promises that he will be exempt from entrance exams. Haruto agrees to go and carry out his own plan to get kicked out of school early, while his copy will protect his body inside barriers. The royal capital's palace is home to Queen Girot and her son Rias. Princess Marianne, a beauty who resembles the late former queen, rushes in with excitement to deliver a reply. Rias, facing his desk, turns his attention to his sister. They discuss Hearth, an opponent Rias has been writing letters to. Marianne also expresses her admiration for Hearth. The conversation then shifts to rumors of a devil-worshipping organization, Lucifera, gaining power, and the discovery of a mysterious man known as the Black Warrior. Queen Girota enters and discusses with Rias the arrival of Sir Zenfis's son at their school and requests for him to gather information, specifically about the Black Warrior, without Marianne or Sir Zenfis's son being aware. The queen harshly banished Marianne from the palace and laughed maniacally, causing Rias to collapse in regret over his irreversible mistake. Meanwhile, Hearth successfully developed a transposition device that he named the Anywhere Door. His excited younger sister watched on. Haruto remembered something he forgot, so he visited his hidden house by the lake. There, he had built a 1DK castle with the finest wood. He used his barrier magic to make a special wall attachment that allowed him to watch anime and connect to the internet. He watched a magical girl anime with his sister Charlotte, who was obsessed with it. Charlotte studied hard, as it was the time for the aristocrats to acquire essential education. Charlotte was assisted by Lisa, a little blue-haired demon girl with horns and a tail. A dragon, rumored to have been killed by the protagonist, protects him like Frey. Lisa teaches Charlotte magic. Charlotte wants to be treated like a friend. The protagonist announces he'll be living in the royal capital next week. Charlotte cancels her plans and holds a round-table meeting with the knights. The protagonist watches anime. Near the lake's log house, Charlotte thanks the knights for gathering. A person with dog ears jokes about being forced to play with Charlotte. Blue Dragon Lisa reminds them to focus on the subject. Johnny, commander of the Night Skeleton Army, communicates with Haruto via magical forces. Charlotte reveals that her brother will attend magic school, but questions its necessity. The matter is delicate, and they ask Charlotte not to inquire any further. Johnny assures them that he'll deal with any problems that arise. Charlotte reveals that her school warned her that magic school is dangerous. Lisa calmly takes notes during the table meeting, while the others discuss a possible underground evil organization controlling the student council and its connection to Haruto. The team works out a plan, and Lisa suggests consulting Haruto, but the idea is dismissed. Later that night, Lisa expresses concern about the situation to Haruto, who reassures her and asks her to keep an eye on Charlotte. He plans to use their distraction for potential secrecy. Haruto had refrained from going to school for 3 days, but was then called out to take a formality exam before admission. He saw it as an opportunity to prove himself, but also hoped to fail and drop out before enrolling. While lost in the school, he took a difficult written test and mostly wrote "I don't know," as he had only learned barrier magic. The test included a question about ancient magic, which he had studied a little bit. When they were going to measure his magic level, he declared that it was at most 2, so there was no need to bother measuring. Haruto's father told him that he wouldn't have an attribute, but he applied a sticker to deceive them. In the reception room, a small girl with a hazy black robe and glasses questioned Haruto's qualifications. Professor Tia, a professor at the school, tested Haruto's knowledge of magic, but he broke the Mija crystal. Despite this, Tia was impressed with his interpretation of barrier magic and invited him to be in her laboratory, which backfired on her when he rejected the offer. Haruto, the magical copy of Heart Zenfis, is in his bleak dorm room with a mission to complete for his main body. He is anxious about attending the entrance ceremony and getting involved with anyone, but has a gun for self-defense. He learns about ways to get expelled from the school and is recommended by the king to attend. While trying to avoid a group of people, he meets a beautiful girl named Pony. The vice president of the student council confronts Pony and Haruto, asking for respect, but Haruto feigns ignorance and tries to leave. The nobleman attacks him with magic, but Haruto survives due to the protective barrier on his body. Everyone is surprised that he is unharmed, but Haruto acts pitiful to play the part. Heartsea acts out a painful scene, causing confusion for the nobleman who attacked him. He spots a suspicious young woman who apologizes for causing trouble. Heartsea tries to escape but is caught by a teacher. Schneiderhafen, a fourth-year student, attacks Heartsea with powerful magic, but Heartsea pulls out an unfamiliar object and fires, breaking Schneider's bones. Schneider wonders how he got injured and concludes that someone attacked him from hiding. He passes out with thoughts of winning next time. The main character feels dueling is out of date due to his modern Japanese beliefs. He rushes to his dormitory when informed of an emergency situation with his copy at school. A senior announces a duel to be held in 2 days, which he initially refuses due to his weak magic abilities and fear of tarnishing his father's reputation. However, he accepts the challenge and sets up a tracking and surveillance ward to find out more about his opponent. He overhears a conversation between the senior and a woman with a ponytail and transforms into an alter ego to prepare for the impending duel. The nobleman Schneider, who proposed the duel, is shown to be a despicable character who makes inappropriate demands of the ponytailed woman. Schneider obsesses over a woman's breasts while she takes off her clothes. Schneider, a noble, argues with a man named Schwartz about magical battles in their school. Schwartz puts a dark vise on Schneider's shoulder to punish him for his past actions, with which Schneider struggles. Schwartz disappears through a black wall, leaving Schneider in pain. Schneider, a future noble househead and vice president of a top magic school, was found covered in bodily fluids. He was embarrassed and desired solitude, but the black world quickly vanished. His lackeys helped him up, but noticed something wet. A healer attempted to help, but he pushed her away. Humiliated, Schneider's consciousness faded into darkness. Haruto's copy has gone on strike, and he is forced to attend school despite his reluctance. He is interrogated by 10 teachers about his dispute with a nobleman, but is ultimately not punished since the nobleman has been causing trouble lately. Haruto then learns about 2 courses in the school, the night course and the doctorate course. Though students are required to belong to a training room or laboratory, the degree of freedom is high. Haruto is approached by Professor Tia, who invites him to join her lab, but he declines. Rias, who is Prince Rias and Haruto's stepbrother, introduces him to Princess Marianne. Others at school are impressed by Haruto defeating the nobleman. Someone named Pritsing donated for an extra chapter of Jitsuwa Ore, saikyōdeshita. Haruto's younger brother suddenly appeared to fight, but Haruto defeated him. Onii, who smiles gently, also appeared. Rias talked about Haruto defeating Hafen family Schneider. The surroundings were shocked by the news, so they switched the subject to ask what Rias wanted from Haruto. Professor Lucian appeared, and Rias and Tiarietta started negotiating over Haruto, but he declined both options. A strange woman with white hair appeared and wanted to talk to Haruto. Suddenly, Haruto's warding magic activated, and he made a barrier. The woman then apologized for getting Haruto into trouble and thanked him for saving her from the senior student's attack. Lastly, she made a request. The woman had told Haruto her sad background, which included being abandoned as a baby and being avoided by others. She asked him to be her friend and learn common sense together, which he agreed to. Haruto had a plan to use her as a friend to get out of Professor Tia's recruitment, but he also felt annoyed by her. Later, Haruto went to an open-air bath in the park with his friends, including Liza, who used to be a blizzard dragon and lived in a cold area. They talked about the Demon King, who Haruto was the reincarnation of, and his former name, Iris Philia. Lastly, Haruto got his first friend, and he didn't tell her that they would still be friends even if he dropped out of school. On the second day of school, Haruto, a former hikikomori, made a friend named Iris. They discussed doing class selection together, which Iris thought would be more efficient. They went to Haruto's room to do this, but were surprised to see his little sister, Charl, there. She was curious about Iris being Haruto's lover, but they revealed they're just friends. They discussed classes and Haruto's non-academic purpose, which he was unwilling to share with Iris. They finished selecting classes, and Iris asked to be recommended to a research lab specializing in ancient magic, which Haruto agreed to. They planned to go together the next day to apply for classes, and Haruto felt a beautiful girl figure on his desk was staring at him. Heartsea and Iris arrived at an old mansion to complete a mission. Mr. Polkos welcomed them and invited them to a messy room. After a discussion, Iris pulled Heart away to investigate screams. They found a bound Schneiderian and Mr. Polkos, and later discovered that the little glasses doctor was the criminal. Professor Tia demonstrated a disc-shaped barrier, which Hart guessed was ancient magic. Professor Tia mentioned the Hoffen air and questioned Iris about advanced magic. Hart recorded the information in his brain. Schneider fainted again. Schneider, a nobleman, is slapped and mocked for lacking guts. Professor Tia is referred to as Little Demon Glasses due to her nature. Schneider mentions his status as the next head of House Hafen, but Hart Zenfis reminds him that Professor Lucian is a member of the royal family. Schneider is interrogated about an unidentified villain, but refuses to give details. Professor Tia suggests that the villain's identity may be someone Hart knows. The conversation then shifts to Hart's low magical ability and the circumstances of his enrollment at the school. Suddenly, the main body of Hart's black hero appears to provide a distraction. The observer was monitoring the copy while hiding in an optical camouflage ward, watching the quirky professor and the woman who could get him in trouble. To avoid suspicion, he appeared in shiver mode. The ancient wizard's concern was justice and not the boy in the room. The nobleman Schneider was restrained until the morning. The observer destroyed the restraining wards on him and Professor Tia and put restraining wards on her instead. Mr. Polkos, her assistant, was apologetic. Professor Tia had to run to the bathroom. The observer left through the window. Heartsea was left behind when the main body departed. Schneider had already gone home, and Professor Tia and Iris were having fun discussing ancient magic at the welcome party. Hart listened to Mr. Polkos' stories about a genius, but wondered about the relevance of ancient magic. Iris got drunk and fell asleep on the couch. Professor Tia revealed her hope to open a door in ancient magic that could advance Iris and earn her a medal. She admired Iris for trying to grasp onto a slim possibility. Hart decided to stay in the lab until the mission was completed, and thought about the strange but clumsy people around him. A copy of Hart appeared, and they discussed sleeping in the lab. Schneider went crazy in his mansion after being humiliated and injured in a duel with Hart. He plans to overthrow the monarchy and establish a new dynasty, and sends a group of assassins to eliminate the 4 witnesses to his disgrace. However, the assassins encounter an invisible barrier around the building and are unable to breach it. Suddenly, a black man with mysterious powers appears and takes out the assassins effortlessly. A tweet caused shock among the team, leaving them unable to move. The captain stepped back, hitting an invisible wall. A man appeared and asked about their involvement with the Hafen family. He showed them a video confirming the team's plans to kill and hide corpses. The man questioned their actions and invited them to meet in person. The team was left scared and in the dark. Schneider was confused as to how the man had found out so fast about the assassination report. The man showed him a recording function and magic that allows seeing distant places. He estimated this man to be a demon. Schneider had to buy time until the elite unit returned to eliminate the man. He found out that the man had captured his elite troop. The man turned out to be Hart Zenfis. Schneider's right leg was crushed, and he was told that his lower body had already disappeared. Hart had suspicions about Schneider's order and asked him to prepare to be killed. Schneider disappeared from this world. Younger sisters have an ability to read their brother's heart, and their bond is inevitable. It's the first day of class for Haruto at the Royal Granfeld Special Grade Magic Academy. His sister Charlotte has arranged for a maid named Frey to accompany him on campus, disguised as a human with a headband and skirt to hide her dog ears and tail. Liza, another maid, joins them through an anywhere door. Haruto is enrolled in Class C, the middle class, but he discovers that some of the classes he's been assigned to are usually taken by second and third year students. He considers dropping them, but doesn't want to disappoint those who recommended him for the classes. Ultimately, he decides to attend all classes, with the support of his sister. Haruto left the dormitory with Liza and meets Iris Filia, a beautiful white-haired pony girl. Iris asks if he's meeting someone, and he confirms he was meeting her. They discuss Iris's class placement, and Haruto realizes she must be something great. During class, the teacher hands out an unannounced test, but Haruto finds it easy and finishes it perfectly. The teacher compliments Haruto's abilities and recommends moving him up to A class. Despite feeling like the early dropout plan was a dead end, Haruto remains calm and hopes to recover. He enters the classroom and realizes he is lost, but soon gets taken away by Rias and Iris. Professor Belcom begins to explain attribute theory, and Haruto struggles to keep up. The professor writes on the board, and Haruto falls asleep but wakes up to mention hidden attributes. Professor Belcom becomes aggressive and asks how he knows about it. A researcher sends advanced research papers to the Magical Society. The papers suggest the existence of invisible attributes that could complement or weaken the effectiveness of attributes. The researcher's sister is impressed. The negative auxiliary attribute is confirmed. However, they are proceeding carefully and haven't reported it to the royal family. Professor Berkham teases Iris for her interest in the researcher and tries to recruit her. Iris declines, stating her interest in Professor Tier's research. The conversation continues, but eventually the researcher's shoulder is released. Professor Berkham jokes about the name Weiss Owl. Liza, heartbroken and alone, is contacted by Charlotte through magic and tasked with gathering information on the back student council. Tiarietta, a professor of ancient magic, offers to help but becomes suspicious of Liza's true identity. Liza nearly attacks her, but Charlotte intervenes and instructs Liza to spare her life. Tiarietta becomes excited to meet Weiss Owl, a rumoured genius researcher, but is reminded to keep their discussion limited for Liza's safety. Tiarietta is in the cold and decides to join Weiss Owl. Lisa explains that there are some conditions for formal participation, but Tiarietta is willing to give them her trust. Charlotte explains that they are the Shiva Watchers group, and they want information about a dark organization that is targeting the academy. Tiarietta and Lisa gather information about a religious group, and Shiva monitors the situation from behind the scenes. After lunch, Haruto and Rias participated in a magic shooting class. The objective was to hit distant targets with a precise and strong magic attack. The instructor warned that anyone unable to destroy their target would fail. Rias impressed everyone with his accurate and forceful use of light magic. Haruto, on the other hand, struggled to hit his target due to being distracted by a passing bird. During the class, a mysterious attack occurred, which Haruto may have prevented with his advanced magical ability. The instructor praised Haruto's remote control skills, which he considered superior to even royalty. Despite feeling frustrated, Haruto was praised by his classmates. Haruto regrets his previous blunder and is determined to not fail again. He attends the next class, Magic Body Art, where the teacher emphasizes the importance of close-quarters combat and body skills. Iris and Rias are nominated for a mock battle against each other, but Iris also nominates Haruto. During the battle, Iris quickly attacks Rias, who struggles to defend himself. However, Rias eventually lands a blow on Iris, causing the teacher to call an end to the fight. The teacher praises Iris's refined movements, but notes that she needs to improve her magic level. Haruto is encouraged by the others to challenge Rias next. During a practice bout with Rias, Haruto enhances his body using ward magic and is ready to lose spectacularly. Rias seems more focused and passionate than ever before, and Haruto braces himself for the incoming attack. After taking a strong punch to the face, Haruto pretends to be unconscious, surprising both Rias and their teacher. The teacher praises Haruto for demonstrating battlefield chivalry and reminds the class that cowardice has no place in war. Haruto secretly releases a tiny needle, aimed at Rias's back, as a means of gathering evidence. The session ends with Rias congratulating Haruto, and Haruto laughing to himself about his true intentions. Haruto's first day at school was overwhelmed with praise, making it a setback for his dropout plan. He had an emergency meeting with his copy, and they argued about their situation, the need for a constructive discussion, and the fact that the highest-ranked classes could bring their own signature magic tools. They discussed their plan for attending school, with Haruto skipping the middle day of the week, and finally remembered the needle incident. Meanwhile, Rias finishes his voluntary practice and is reminded of his mother's strict order to get information about the unidentified warrior. He meets his sister in a carriage, and then, suddenly, the black warrior named Shiva appeared, revealing that Rias was being targeted. Shiva warns him twice already from the flying needles and tells him to be careful. Rias asks about Shiva's identity and reason for being in the royal capital, but Shiva disappears without answering. The man didn't want to reveal his identity to Rias, but he said he had a history with her mother, and it was fine. He warned her not to let her mother know that she had been looking for him. Then he disappeared in a strange way. Rias thought he might have sneaked in with her when she was in the carriage. She listened to the sound of the carriage going for a while. Heartsease and Lisa go to Professor Tia's lab with a mysterious needle that was shot at Rias. Professor Tia uses an appraisal device to analyze the needle and finds that it carries a curse of darkness and chaos. They speculate that the culprit might be a teacher or an outsider and use an attribute ratio to narrow down the possibilities. Professor Belcom and Professor Tia engage in banter while trying to solve the case. Haruto questioned whether it was easier to study quietly or search among the crowded school for a specific person. He finally focused on a good-looking fourth-year boy who turned out to be one of Schneider's cronies. Haruto followed him to a secret meeting with a group called Numbers. They were all wearing white attire and numbered masks, discussing their failed attempts to overthrow the monarchy and achieve aristocratic supremacy. They were after Rias, and Haruto suspected the culprit was the one who was 7. The discussion was heating up, with some considering Lord Zenfis as a potential asset, while others opposed his commoner birth. Haruto leaned back against the wall, listening to the self-indulgent debate and suspecting they didn't know the true effects of the needle they used. The purpose of the Numbers is to incite conflict between the king and queen factions. First, Rias was attacked to throw suspicion on the king's faction. Then, Princess Marianne was attacked to make it seem like the queen's revenge. The next target is the aristocrats. Haruto thinks it's a poorly planned governor. He wonders what would have happened if Rias had died. Haruto thinks they're not worth his attention and that Charl and her friends can deal with them. The question is, who's behind it all? Haruto guesses it's the aristocrats and a religious organization called the Lucifer Order. He thinks getting rid of them will solve the problem. It's time for justice to be served. In the merchant-filled north side of the royal capital, a luxurious inn caught Queen Giselotte's attention. Inside, a man named Baron Val Agos spoke to her about their plans for assassination and revolution. But before that, Agos revealed that Giselotte was under a sophisticated form of barrier magic. This led them to suspect that the man they're after is an ancient magic user. To help find him, Agos suggested 2 names, Thierrietta Luchanel and Weiss Owl. An unknown researcher named Weiss Owl has caught the attention of Giselotte and Agos due to his expertise in ancient magic. They suspect that he might be connected to Professor Luchanel, who also specializes in the same field. However, Agos is hesitant to approach her and risk Weiss Owl finding out about their plan to overthrow the king. They reveal their plan to start a revolution and overthrow the king by using the aristocrats' meeting as a decoy. They also plan to capture Professor Lucianel, but worry about the Black Warrior who has not yet made an appearance. Mercumenes, an ally to Agos, advises him to kill anyone who may possess ancient magic, even if they belong to their own species. Agos contemplates his usefulness to the demon gods and eagerly awaits the impending revolution. The Grandfelt Special Class Wizarding Academy has a large campus with woodlands, including one with a gaping hole in the ground. 3 girls gather there, discussing a magical scent that they can't quite place. Frey, Charlotte, and Lisa use their respective abilities to try and uncover the presence of a massive magic formula that has been carved into the ground. The discovery leads them to believe that a dark organization could be behind it, possibly even working in the numbers. More troubling, the magic formula is present in various locations throughout the royal capital, and if activated, it could break up the security network and threaten the royal palace. Iris, a part-time delivery person, joins the girls and reveals she can sense magic. Together, they discuss countermeasures, while Charlotte wonders if this is Shiva's plan for their group, the Society for the Protection of Shiva, and the recognition of his greatness, the Beobahata, and Camelot. Despite the urgency of their situation, the group remains determined to deal with the magic formula. Iris suggests relying on teachers, but they don't have time to explain the situation. They discuss destroying the magical artifacts, but they are outnumbered. Iris leaves to find help on campus. Charlotte gives control of the magic to Rias and Marianne. They experience a temporary setback, but Charlotte uses a magical stick to fly and destroy the other artifacts. They communicate using a watch-shaped device. Lisa arrived at the Royal Palace Square and found it completely blocked off by soldiers. She devised a plan to set the ice stake near the target, but needed to evacuate the people first. An explosion sounded, and a circular magic circle shone in front of the palace. Lisa flew out and announced, "Shatter!" which destroyed an elder ghoul that attacked her. She then trapped a group of demons in a dome-shaped ice wall and carefully destroyed them one by one. Meanwhile, Charlotte used her walking stick to summon an army of night skeletons to respond to her summons. Orders were given to eliminate enemy elder ghouls and evacuate residents. With a roar, the skeletal soldiers charged forward while the elder ghouls appeared. Another shadow fell from the sky, and Gigan destroyed the enemy's summoning circle. Charlotte gave the order to clean up the remaining enemies, and the giant golem and elite soldiers responded with a roar. Lucianel Sensei's research building is surrounded by an assassination squad who plan to kill the prince and princess during the revolution. Tiarietta, Hart, and Porcos are interrupted by intruders in black cloaks who surround them and demand that Tiarietta come with them. Hart uses his magic gun to fight back, and they escape through a secret passage. Tiarietta leads them to a crowded place, but they encounter dark humanoid deformities. They are joined by 3 student fighters.